Welcome to our Portuguese Table podcast. I'm Maria Lawton, the Azorean Green Bean.
And I'm Angela Simoes, and we're just two chicks dishing about Portuguese food, culture, and what it means to be Portuguese.
So grab a glass of vinho or copo de café and join us as we talk about our favorite foods, reminisce about growing up Portuguese,
and interview some of our community's most successful chefs and food writers.
So sit down at our Portuguese table. Hi everyone, welcome to our Portuguese table. I'm Maria. Hi Angela, I know you're there, honey.
Yep, hi everybody.
And today we're all excited. We have Anna Ortins in the house. We have her here to talk about with her all the amazing things that she's up to and that she's doing. Hi, Anna.
Hi there. How are you doing, Maria?
I'm fine, honey. I'm fine. You know, we're so happy that you're here. Thank you for taking the time because I know you're so busy to talk to us. And I know you've got your second book that you're promoting, and it's beautiful, Anna. You did a beautiful job again. Beautiful.
Lots of work, as you know, what can go into that.
Yes, it is. You know, it is made with love. It has to be made with love. So for those that are out there, Anna, do you want to just let them know who you are and, a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Anna Ortins. I was born and brought up in the United States to parents that came from the Alentejo province in Alto Alentejo, in a little freguesia or a little town called Galveias. And from a very young age, I was learning how to cook under my father's watchful eye and my grandparents and grandmother. I have just grown up with the passion for cooking and savoring our good food.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, the first time I heard about you was your first cookbook that you did. And, you know, and Angela and I talk about this all the time, and that is, you know, supporting those that are your own. And anytime I would see any cookbook that had to do with anything having to do with Portuguese food, I've got to get it. I've got to buy it because I have to support it. I have to support our own. We have to support our own. And so the first book was just beautiful. It was just beautiful, and I know that it was done again with love because you have the pictures of some family. You've got, I literally have, I think the first run of the book, I had to run out and get it. So, you know, because I know since then they changed the cover and all that stuff. I have the original. I have the original.
Well, sometimes publishers like to freshen the cover up to keep the book
okay.
Alive, you know, and well. But the last cover is being changed again to what I don't know. But it had the last time they did that, there were some additional recipes that were added. So it was like a refreshed edition. It's been printed so many times that they wanted to update it, keep it fresh, you know, the cover.
Oh, okay.
Keep it out there.
So does that mean I have to buy the new one? I mean, the one with the first one with the new color?
No.
Okay, all right. Because I was saying, did I miss anything? Did I miss anything that I...
No, I'll tell you why. Because what we did is, in the new book,
okay.
That were in the first book, that were added to the first book, because I knew there were many people who did not get those additional recipes. So what I did is I put them in the second book.
Oh, perfect. So
I did an adaptation of them.
Yeah.
So that, because I couldn't do it exactly with my own.
Yes, yes.
Copyright issues, you know. But
right.
So they are in there, and so no worries.
Yeah. Now, I know one of the questions I know I want to ask you is, just for question's sake, what is your first food memory?
My first food memory, you mean, is in cooking?
Being a young child, and what is your first food memory that you can think of?
It could be something that your grandmother gave you or that you made. Yeah.
Anything.
Soup. My grandmother's chicken soup.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she would make that every time I would go visit her, and my father would make it at home. So that was the thing that I remember sticking out in my mind. And in turn, for my own grandchildren, that's what I've made them, and that's what they would want when they came here.
Really?
And,
It continued.
Oh, yeah. And the thing is, my grandmother made it a certain way, and then my aunt would make it slightly different. And I make it both ways, depending what kind of mood I am in. And my grandchildren, some like it my grandmother's way, and some prefer it my aunt's way. So there you go. And then I put my own little touches in it.
Sure.
It's funny you mentioned that, Anna, because we have talked about that before, Maria and I, about how not only do people call certain dishes different things. For example, some people say malasada, some people say fiage, and in Canada, apparently they're beaver tails. How have people responded to your recipes that were done in the style of your family, right? Have they come to you and said, well, aren't you supposed to add this in? And then, I'm just curious what your experience has been like that, because I know, Maria, you've had sometimes that's happened, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, it depends on who it is that's responding, because if I have recipes that are from my family and that are more in continental style, I'll get some people from the islands will say, we don't make it that way. That's not the way you do it. Or vice versa. I'll get one time with the first book, Soup of the Corves is an example. I had said, the caldo verde is considered like the national soup of Portugal. And then somebody else remarked that the soup of the Corves is the national soup of the Azores. And I said, why are they picking at this? Because my grandmother, and I think soup of the Corves is totally Portuguese. I don't care what part you come from, because my grandmother, who came from the village, made soup of the Corves. Yeah. And it's very much like the Azorean version. And yet, I have a friend of mine whose family came from northern Portugal, and she made hers a little different. Her family would put carrots in their soup of the Corves, which we never did. My father would use the yellow turnip called the rutabaga, but he would add that to his soup of the Corves, not carrots. Is it wrong? No, it's not wrong. It's just every
right.
region.
It's funny. Yeah. And I actually love the fact that there are different versions and people make them different ways, because in my family, so I'm third generation, Anna, and so we didn't have a ton of traditional recipes all the time. We actually had just traditional desserts at family celebrations, but on a daily basis, we ate fairly American. And so now when I go cook, a lot of these dishes I'm cooking for the first time. And so, like Maria, I will go buy any Portuguese cookbook that's out there to support our, Portuguese chefs. So if I want to go make sopa de couve, I'll actually look at the recipes in all the different books and either pick one or mix and match ingredients and kind of make my own, because sometimes recipes, like you said, have ingredients that others don't, and you think, oh, that sounds really good. I think I'm going to go ahead and add that too, So I actually love the fact that there are different ways to make the same dish.
Absolutely. I agree.
When you hear the name soup de couve, kale soup, that's what it is. But we have almost as many versions of kale soup as you do for codfish,
Right. Yep.
So, I mean, and everybody, I was brought up, you cooked with what you had on hand. So if my father didn't have a rutabaga today and didn't have any turnip whatsoever, well, maybe he might have a sweet potato, or maybe not.
That's right.
It. You know what I'm saying? So
I do.
And that's why a lot of the recipes are different, too, because years ago, people didn't write the recipes down. And because they cooked with what they had on hand, and if somebody really, really liked the soup, oh, Maria, I want you to make that soup you made last week. Well, I don't know which one. Where did I do it? She doesn't remember. Because she doesn't remember what she had that day in the cabinet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why these recipes are different, and that's why I always tell people, write them down for your family. Save these recipes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you, honey. Now, let me ask you another question. Do you remember the first dish that you cooked?
The first dish that I cooked was calderone.
Really?
Yep. Yep,
Wow.
calderone.
I love that you knew that. I love that you knew that right away. Like,
well, because I was 10 years old. Well, I'm sad about this. You know, I was 10 years old when my father showed me how to cut the cores for calderone. And we didn't have a machine. I didn't have a machine or machina to cut them. We didn't use a cutting board, to the horror of my culinary instructors. But my father taught me to roll the leaves up like a cigar, hold that cigar in the left hand and cut away with the sharp knife on the right. And I wasn't using a paring knife. I was using a big knife. I was slow in the beginning, and it took practice, but I have to say to this day, I can say proudly that I've never once cut my thumb when I was cutting those cords. But I did learn the true meaning of a green thumb. My thumb was always this emerald shade of green when I was done.
Yeah, it would be all green. Wow, that is awesome.
That would make a great picture for a cookbook, like in the back cover or profile picture.
I really have a green
the next
thumb.
time I do it, I'll take a photo and I'll put it on my website.
Yeah, and say, guess what I'm making. I love it. I love it. Now, another thing, is there any food you won't eat?
Any food, and we mean culture-wise, or
and is there one
items?
Food you absolutely won't eat?
In our food,
yes, yeah.
I want to say, I shouldn't say it's hard because I make this statement after I've already tried it. Okay, I'm not into dobrada.
Oh,
I've tried it. I've made it, and I make it well because my father loved it, my grandfather loved it. I have friends who love it, but for myself, I'm not crazy about it.
I'm right there with you.
So
I'm right there with you.
Remind the third generation girl here what dobrada is. I've heard it, but I can't remember what's in it.
It's the lining of the stomach.
Tripas.
It's tripe.
No, not tripas.
It's tripe.
Well,
honey.
they call
It's
them
the
tripas.
lining of a cow's stomach.
Right.
Not the intestines. Tripas is the intestines.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but it's tripe. It's the lining of a cow's stomach. And
Right.
I'm right there with you, Anna.
I'm with you there too.
You can get it clean from the supermarket, but you still need to sprinkle or coat it with coarse salt and lemon juice and scrub it.
Oh, absolutely.
Rinse it and let it do it again and let it sit in that lemon juice and salt overnight to purify it.
Right. Absolutely. I know there's a lot of people that love to make that feijoada, and then they do it with the tripe, with the dobrada in it. And there are a whole bunch of people who love that, and I will eat around that tripe. I will not eat it. No, I will not eat it. I agree with you.
I've tried frog legs. I've tried alligator. I've tried ostrich, and of course the rabbit and boar and all that stuff. But the dobrada is just something,
It's a texture thing, I think.
It's a mental thing, I guess.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. It really is.
Can't wrap my head around it.
But now, the other day when we were doing our podcast, Angela and I, we did our introduction one. We were telling people who was going to be on and just like letting people know, what to look for. When your name came, when we talked about you, we also talked about, your two books that you've written, but your true love is baking bread. And I know I follow you on Facebook and stuff. And that day when we did the podcast, you had posted pictures of like freshly baked bread. And then that's all we talked about after. We're like, oh my God, bread. But I know you teach people how to bake bread, correct?
I do. I teach people how to do bread and, our Portuguese dishes and culinary basics. And I also teach them some Italian food as well. But the bread, my father had a bread bakery, and so maybe it's just in the blood. After I finished this book, I had joined a bread baking group to fine-tune what I do, and I learned to do the sourdough bread, but I also learned to improve what I already was doing. And it's very, I want to say contagious, because you want to keep going. I mean, you have a starter. I'm using a starter, which I never used before. I mean,
really?
You'd make a ferment before, or a poolish, as they call it, or a sponge. But this was different because I have starter that came from Italy. This someone gave me. They sent it to me. And this starter, you have to feed it every day. You have to feed it every day. And so what you have to do is cut down the amount and discard part of it and keep the other and feed it. And you can sometimes refrigerate if you're not going to bake for a couple of days. Otherwise, you'd be up to your eyeballs in bread. But I can't bring myself to throw away the discards, which a lot of them do. So what I do is I have a separate container that I add the discards to, and then I make bread with that too. So it's just that starter. I don't want to lose that starter because it comes from a culture. It comes from a culture that's over 300 years old that people have kept going. But when I take the bread, because obviously I can't eat all this bread, I'll wrap some up, double wrap it, put it in the freezer, and then when I need one for company or for ourselves, I just pop it in the oven, and it's like it just got baked. But the rest of it, I bring down to the food pantry when I'm cooking down there, and they love it down there too. So.
Yeah, I know. I love that you do that. I love that you do that you cook at the food pantry and making some wonderful Portuguese dishes for them. I think that's amazing.
They love the soups. They love the soups.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. Now, I know I'm asking all the questions here, but I wanted to ask also for me and you, like if we had our mom and our grandmother here, what dish would you want them to make for you?
Oh my goodness, that's hard because my grandmother would make, one of the things she liked, there's two things I remember her making a lot was, one, the cozido.
Oh.
Ooh, good stuff.
So good.
That. Yep. And then the other, it was the way she roasted her turkey. She would roast it, she would drape bacon over the top, and it would take on a flavor. Now, before she put it in the oven, she would take bacon and she'd lay it over the top of the turkey before she roasted it, and that would baste it. And you get that.
That's brilliant.
Now, is she? That is brilliant beyond brilliant.
Yeah. I'm so doing that for Thanksgiving.
I could go for that right now, Anna.
Now, see, you're making me hungry talking about food.
Oh, God. Now, your grandmother and mother were Italian, or were they Portuguese?
Oh, my grandmother was Portuguese. My mother was Italian, but born here. And when she married my father, she learned to cook Portuguese, talk Portuguese. Unfortunately, she passed away when I was only 2 and a half. So my father, of course, wanted to be father and mother to me, make sure that I was brought up right, did all the culture, learned how to cook Portuguese in the whole 9 yards. He remarried to another Italian, but she was not like my mother at all. She did not cook. She wasn't into a lot of that. To her, it was just something she had to do. She wasn't the passionate cook like my mother.
Right.
But my grandmother, my father would have me go to my grandmother's while he worked, and my grandmother was the one who would show me different things. But, growing up in your grandmother's house, and she doesn't speak a word of English other than thank you and hello. That's all she knew. Hello, thank you. That's all she could say. You had no choice, but you knew what she was saying. You learned quickly. I used to stand on I think it was 8. I was standing on a soapbox, the wooden soapboxes, ironing my grandfather's long johns.
Oh, how cute! That's a great memory.
It wasn't cute to me. I mean, at the time, long johns, slips, because back in the old country, that's how they killed germs, was ironing everything.
Oh, is that why?
they may have hot water there. You know, they have those habits, and they bring those habits here. They don't break those habits. I mean, my grandmother, even though she was washing with hot water now with a washing machine, you know, she would have me iron everything. Iron, vacuum.
Isn't that funny? Because my grandmother, now we're talking, my grandmother, she would iron everything, and I always thought it was because she was a neat freak. Now, honest to goodness, that's how I thought.
Exactly.
Because she would iron my grandfather's socks. I remember this. She would iron her socks, underwear, the sheets to the bed. I mean, towels.
Everything.
She would iron everything. And I really, all these years, I thought, okay, she just was a real neat freak. And that's why because everything was folded nicely. I mean, everything was taken care of. You know what I mean?
But I bet if you asked her why she did it, she would tell you, she would have told you that it's because her mother did it.
That it was because of germs. I didn't know
Maria,
that.
We learn something every podcast. This is awesome.
This is awesome. I never knew that. I never knew that.
But she was very strict. I mean, as a young girl, I had to learn how to crochet, how to darn a sock. My grandmother made sure she sat me in a chair. My mother putting the egg underneath in the sock hole, mending a hole in my grandfather's sock. And to play with my brothers who were out front playing wiffle ball, oh no, I had to sit on the stoop and watch them. She was in the living room watching the news with my grandfather, and my brothers would say, come on, let's play, you know. And, okay, I loved playing wiffle ball. So, of course, the ball goes flying, and then one of my younger brothers yelling out my name, get the ball on, I don't get the ball. And then my grandmother comes to the door, I'm Ducky. You know, she would say, you sit here, and you know, I couldn't play. You girls just didn't play with the boys. You nicked in your brother. So, so she'd go back inside. I'd go back to play. And then it'd bring my name again. And then my grandmother would come to the door. And then at that point, she'd make me come in the house. And I had to sit in the living room and watch the news with my grandparents.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, it was old school.
Yeah, it was old school. That was old school. Well, you know, it's funny. Of course, when they came over, because it was your grandparents that came over, correct? Yeah. Originally? Yeah. They
my grandfather first.
Oh, your grandfather first. They kind of bring those traditions with them, and they can hold on to them for dear life.
But you know what? There's a lot of people who have come, even since the 1960s, that did the same thing. I know some of them who still are doing things the old way, as if they were in the old country, and not just in the old country, but still. I mean, I think people in Portugal and the Azores here are people who are more modern than the ones who came here and are living here.
You're absolutely
right. Yeah,
absolutely right. When I visit my aunts and uncles, when I go there to San Miguel, I always say, and I give a kiss, and I say titia bens, and I say titia bens, because that's how I was raised. When you kissed your aunt and your uncle, you would always say tia bens, titia bens. Yeah. When I go there and I do that, my aunt and my uncle look at me funny and they go, you know, you're the only one who ever says that. They don't do this anymore. Like, they don't do that anymore.
No, they don't.
And
just
there's like all.
They don't do it.
They don't. And it's like, and there are some things where, and like I said before, they came here, they held on to that tradition for dear life, and that's the way it is, and that's how it goes. And when you do go there, you go, oh my God, they've moved on. They're very modern. You know,
they have electricity now.
They do.
Yes, they do.
And they do have wooden floors. It's not dirt floors anymore, guys. You know, it's like they've modernized. I love their new homes that they've been building. It's so modern. It's beautiful. I mean, just beautiful stuff.
The house my father grew up in, a stone house, and it wasn't until probably, I want to say 1970, maybe even 1968, that they actually got a pipe with running water, single pipe of running water. I remember seeing it by the door. They would have, running water in their house. That was the only that they could get that water to use to cook or whatever they needed the water. But up until that point, they didn't have it. That was in the village, you know. I mean, it's very different today. Now, I mean, my cousin she grew up in Santarém, and her family had a little bit more money because the uncle, her father, had cork farms, and now she has them. She's inherited them. But she grew up better. I mean, my grandfather came over here in 1920 by himself when a lot of other people were coming from the continent. And then he was here for, let me see, my father was 11 when he left him there with my grandmother. And he did not go back to visit until, I want to say, 8 years later. And then by that time, my father wasn't there. He was in the military. 16 years old, he was in the military, and probably in Angola. I remember him telling me.
Yeah.
And then after that, my grandfather returned to the States again by himself, leaving my grandmother there. And my grandfather had an industrial accident where he lost both hands.
Oh.
And so, yeah, he had lost both hands. And back then, they wasn't working comp.
Wow.
And it was more like a factory on a splitting machine. And so he came back, but he had no choice but to send for my grandmother. And that was in 1934. And when my father came with my grandmother and my aunt, who was 8 years old at the time. And so they were all here after that. And, you know, my father went to work. Back then, it was the leather shops. That's what was going on here in Peabody. It was all the leather shops. And they were bustling, and, you know, that's where they made their money. But life was different. It was difficult.
Yeah. Wow. Now, let me ask you this. Now, you're married, correct?
Mm-hmm.
How many children?
Yeah. 2. A daughter and a son.
Beautiful. And how many grandchildren?
4 grandchildren. My daughter has 2 boys.
That's a blessing.
And my son has 2 girls.
Oh, how wonderful. Now, when it's time for Thanksgiving, we won't look at Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving, we know there's a turkey and we do all that stuff. But let's say you have them all over. You have everyone at your house, and Mom is going to cook for her children and her grandchildren. You're going to be cooking. What's that table look like, hon?
Well, fortunately, we moved here about 10 years ago, and I have a larger dining room and a full table. I have a huge dining room table that I can fit 12 easily.
Oh, beautiful.
So it's room for all of us. And there were times when I used to have an extension in my other house where we would go from the dining room all the way into the other end of the living room with extra attached tables. But, you know, we set the table, the kids all participate, and we have, in the kitchen, I have a counter where they all have a seat, one for each of them, and they all take part. One might be peeling potatoes, the other one's taking care of carrots, and the other one is green beans, whatever.
Oh,
they all
so you make them work for their lunch.
Well, you know, it's not fun making them work. They love, I mean, these kids love to watch cooking shows. Chopped, Master Chef, they love it. And the youngest one is 8, the oldest is 13. And the oldest one, when he was, I want to say 4, and he was here, I want to say 4, yeah, about 4. He was here, and it was his first experience using the electric mixer. Yeah, he wasn't using
How fun.
We were making waffles for breakfast, and so we had to beat the egg whites, and so he wanted to help. So, of course, I let him put his hand on the mixer, and he thought he was doing the job. Mm-hmm. And when the egg whites turned from translucent to opaque, the first thing out of his mouth was, cool. At 4 years old. Cool. You know, they participate. I believe in getting them involved when they're young, because if you shut them off when they're young, when they want to help in the kitchen, they grow up that they don't want to participate and do anything in the kitchen.
Yeah. My daughter's 2.5, and she loves to help in the kitchen. It's really cute. Even like you said, they're not really doing anything, but they have their hand on the mixer or their hand on yours while you're mixing. It's important to get them involved. And you know, it's funny you mentioned your grandkids watch Chopped and all of the Food Network shows. I think the food shows have done a lot to encourage people to cook more. you know, because it makes it more accessible and, oh, that doesn't look so hard as hard as I thought it was, you know? So I think
it's also, I think, a good learning experience for them that, you know, they're not learning that you have to go out and buy pre-made processed foods that are not as healthy as homemade foods.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, and I think it's good for their ego when they think that they participate. I remember when a couple of them were here. I don't know if it was the girls or the boys, they were mixed, but they were making the Portuguese cookies for my first book, and one was putting the brushing egg wash on the cookies, and the other one's putting the sprinkles on it. Well, you know, I had more sprinkles on the floor than I did the cookies, but that was okay.
That's okay.
I think I was still vacuuming them up, you know, a month later. But it was fun. You know, they enjoyed it, and it makes a good experience for them in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Now, the whole thing behind doing this podcast, Anna, and I know we've talked about this, and is just promoting Portuguese, just promoting all that there is to know about being Portuguese and being proud of who we are, and just how really great our food is, how just experience it all, and for all of us who are Portuguese to be proud of who we are. Now. And so the last question I'm going to ask you is, and I know this is a good one, but what does it mean to you being Portuguese?
Let me see. Being Portuguese to me is, it's a passion. It's a passion for not just our food. I have a passion for my food and the cooking and family. That is probably number one. I don't think I could have a better or a greater passion than for my family, but also for my friends and gathering your friends around, being proud of that. I mean, I grew up with my father doing for others. He had thought nothing of taking the shirt off his back and helping out somebody next to him time and time again. And I feel that's why when I do fancy stuff, I feel I'm giving back. That's my passion. I like to help out. I like to cook. I like to have my family around me, my friends around. And it's being proud of our food and that part of our culture. But it's also the spiritual end, too, because I have a strong belief in God and everything about it.
Yeah.
And so it's all intertwined, I think.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a passion for all of this, you know, life is good.
Yeah, it really is. Well, all I know is I am so proud of you. I am proud that you've written another beautiful book, and I think you're a wonderful person, and I wish you all the best, and I really do. I truly do. You're a sweetheart.
Thank you. Well, you know, one of the other things about the reason why I do those books is because I feel it's in, like you say, what it means to be Portuguese is preserving those recipes.
Absolutely.
I'm not conversation last time.
And I'm not saying don't go outside the box, don't create a modern dish or a modern version. That's all well and good. But I think to preserve the old or to learn the flavors of the old is important, because you can't create something new without knowing what some of those flavors should come from. You know,
you're absolutely right.
Which can build on the old flavors. And I think that if we could preserve these recipes for future generations, that if they want to look back on them and learn about them, I think it's good to have them. And I really would like to see Portuguese food be more, I want to say more enjoyed throughout, you know, the United States. But will it ever be like Italian? Probably not. But I'd like to see more people try it.
You know what? I'm not giving up on that, Anna.
Well, I'm glad.
Not giving up on
Maria, I think you're on the right track, and I wish you luck in all your endeavors, because I think that you're good whatever you do.
Yeah, I always like when other people go, I'm Portuguese. Yeah, we're Portuguese. It's wonderful. You know, it's like, why can't we do this?
I mean, we have a lot of history, the discoveries, we have that to be proud of, the trade routes. But now it's this food, it's just culture that I think we need
absolutely.
to preserve.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're coming close, and I want to thank you again for taking the time. I know you have some other place to go pretty soon.
Yeah, I know. And I want to hear more about when you're working on a second book and how you're doing with that.
Yes. Yes. And but thank you for being on. We truly thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you. It was fun.
We couldn't do it without you. You're important there. It's like to us, it's like, who do we want on for people to hear and to know about, and who, are for us are really wonderful Portuguese people that are out there talking about our culture and everything that it's in our culture, not just food, but everything else. And having, I'm really happy that you were able to do this for us. I really am, Anna.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Celestro. And I hate to leave you guys because this was getting good.
Well, that just means we'll have to have you on again, Anna.
I'd love to be on again.
That's right. We'd love to have you on again, honey.
Okay. So I'll
all right, Anna.
Thank you,
Bye,
Angela.
hon. Bye-bye. Well, that was awesome. That was an amazing talk.
Loved talking to her. It's the first time I'd ever talked to her. I'm so excited.
She's just the sweetest woman. She really is. And I know she was like, I'm so sorry. I can't talk for too long. I've got to, she had to be somewhere in like 10 minutes. So hopefully she'll get there safe and sound. We don't want her to rush over to.
You know what I love is that there's some recurring themes already. We've only talked to two chefs, but I can already see that there's and even things that you have said about preserving the recipes and just, what it means to be Portuguese is the passion and the family. It's so, there's something to be said for consistency.
Yes.
and similarity, so.
Yeah. And we are, when it comes down to it, that is the main core, the inner core of who we are. And it's good to know it's across the board from those that we love in the community. You know what I mean? That are doing so many things for our community.
Yeah.
And if everyone is coming from that one spot, how wonderful is that?
Yeah. My sister and niece were visiting last night. They live in Seattle, but they are in town because they're going to visit colleges here in California.
Oh, nice.
And so my sister, she's my half sister, so she's half I think like Italian and Dutch or something else. But she was raised very closely with the Portuguese side. And so we were talking about how, all the family dinners and how it was just so family oriented, and we really miss those days. And, because our grandparents had passed away, and she was making the comment that she had friends in school that didn't have that closeness of family and didn't have family celebrations around food and things like that. And she said, I always just felt so sorry for them.
Yeah,
and it was so funny because it's kind of true, it's kind of
true.
Ill of others, but when someone's not Portuguese, like, oh, I'm sorry.
That must really be. That really should suck that you're not Portuguese. Really?
I know.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, it is. It's so true. And the funny thing is in growing up, the parties were very big, and it was always as you start losing those that you love. So as soon as you lose your grandparents and then you lose your parents, the parties are getting smaller.
Yeah. And
the people that are there are like, okay, do you remember when? Now we're reminiscing of those parties. Yeah. But the thing is my daughters don't remember those huge parties that we used to have with my parents and my grandparents. Oh. And it's a type of thing where we've got to keep going at it. Even though they are no longer here, you kind of have to keep going at it to make sure that the next generation keeps remembering that.
They do. And, and they really want to because, so my sister, I'm actually the youngest of 5, so I have 3 brothers as well. And while they all are they're proud to be Portuguese, but they were never super involved, right?
Right.
But last night we were talking, and there's certainly a desire to get back to it, right?
Right.
And we should really learn how to cook more Portuguese food, and we really should go back to Portugal and see where our family's from, and we really should, So there's a whole generation of people that maybe have not experienced it, or maybe they have vague memories and really kind of feel something missing because they don't
Right.
have it anymore, and so they really
Right.
want to get back to it. So if things like this podcast or books like what you and George and Anna and David and everyone else are publishing help to facilitate that, I mean,
Yes.
kudos to everybody for doing our community a service. Now we just have to get it in front of them so that they know how to use it, right?
That's right. That is right. Well, I'm so glad that she did take the time to do it. So this was a great podcast. I hope everyone enjoyed it out there. I hope when you hear this that, I just hope everyone enjoys it. It was great talking to her.
It was great talking to her.
Yeah.
And talking to you, Maria. As always.
Same here. Same here, honey. Well, you know what? It's that time.
It is.
It's that time to say goodbye. Until next time. Até a próxima.
Até a próxima. All right, ciao.
We're going to share this little moment now with everyone out there. And that is, we recorded, you hear the intro, outro, and we would laugh so much when we were doing Até a próxima that we did so many outtakes on that, didn't we, Angela?
We did. And,
but it sounds great.
Well, kudos to our sound guy, Scott, because we ended up having to record them separately, and then he put them together, and it sounds like magic. So
it does sound like magic, and Scott is the guy. Thank you, Scott. Our sound guy, Scott. All right, everyone. Até a próxima.
Até a próxima.
Thanks again for listening to our Portuguese Table podcast.
If you haven't subscribed yet, you can do so on SoundCloud or iTunes.
And all episodes can be found on our website at www.ourportuguesetable.com.
You can also reach us at feedback@ourportuguesetable.com with comments, questions, or suggestions.
Até a próxima!